Hi, welcome to part two, the science behind weaving mythic motifs into messaging. The first thing we're going to learn is that we as human beings react to emotion, not information. As it turns out, emotion, not logic, drives human behavior. Now that seems like an amazing thing to say and to hear, but let's look at the science behind it. Hi, so let's look at the limbic brain. This is an MRI of the human brain, and the limbic brain is right there in the center. It kind of looks like there's white behind it, and there's like organ-looking things there kind of in the center. That's the limbic brain or limbic system, and that's what we'll be focusing on here. This is where the center of all emotion is. And just as a dramatic example of so that you can relate to it, have you ever been sitting somewhere or just minding your own business, and in your peripheral vision you see something that you just react to as if it's dangerous? So for example, I was sitting at my desk, and out of the peripheral vision, it seemed like it moved, and I reacted in my mind, it's a spider. And so I had that that startled response, and I could at that time look over and I could get new visual input to tell me, oh no, that's not a spider. The visual input now told me, oh, it's just a pen cap. So now my heart rate decreases back to normal, breathing goes back to normal, everything goes back to normal. So that's the limbic reaction in both the stimulation and then deceleration back into normal. That all happens in the limbic system, and that is a consciously noticeable limbic reaction. But our limbic system is reacting all the time to the visual input. Then we'll talk more about that in just right now, in fact. Let's look at some attributes of the limbic brain. The limbic brain is the center of all emotion. All emotion. It is the center of motivation to act. Motivation to take action is all coming from the limbic system. It's where associative memory lies, and associative memory is I have a memory of something, and do I have a positive association with it or a negative association with it? That happens in the limbic brain. My connection to our connection to other, loyalty, this is all in our limbic brain. This is where this happens. So as communicators, we can look here, and this is the importance of the limbic brain, looking at it, well, we're looking at it so closely here today, because all of these attributes are exactly where we want to be connecting with our audience, because we want them to be connected to us, to have loyalty to us. We want to have positive associative memories. We want to be able to motivate them to take action. And this is all going to happen in the limbic brain. So this is the good news. We now know where in the brain all of this wonderful connection stuff happens. But here's the kicker. The limbic brain is preverbal and symbol based. It doesn't know language. It doesn't know language. It knows symbols. It can know metaphors. It can know mythic motifs. As we talked about in part one, this is the connection here. So we're going to go into more detail on that in the second part of this. But this is where the limbic brain and story really overlap, is because of this fact, is that it is preverbal and symbol based. Which is why every buy is an emotional buy. Let's take a look more closely at this process, because this is really, really key to the whole premise of what we're exploring today. First, sensory data hits the limbic system through sound, or touch, or taste, or smell, or sight, any of our senses. It comes through the limbic system and then into the neocortex. But first, what we do is we make a decision to act. So the decision to act happens right there, just like I was describing earlier. That startle response, that's something we're conscious of, but our limbic system responds to every sound, sight, smell, taste, touch. It responds to everything, every one of our senses. We're just not necessarily conscious of it all the time. So, beliefs are formed in the limbic system, and then a feedback loop between the limbic and the neocortex is immediately developed. And what happens is that belief is sent to the neocortex, more specifically the mid-prefrontal cortex, but I'll just call it the neocortex. And then the brain looks for and finds evidence to support those beliefs. That adds a boost of further confidence in the belief. So for example, with that spider example, if I wasn't able to look over and get new visual cues that that wasn't a spider, this is exactly what would happen. And so I would say, uh-oh, there's this, uh-oh, spider. The brain would, the neocortex would come back and say, yeah, it's black, and spiders are black, and that would feed this loop that would create an emotional boost of confidence, which accelerates the process of reinforcing these initial limbic reactions. In fact, Dr. Daniel Siegel is a world-renowned expert in the field of interpersonal neuroscience. He's even coined a term for this. He calls it the resonance circuit. And so what's the importance here? Is that whatever information we receive after that initial limbic response, whatever that information is filtered by our brains to support that limbic-based decision. So again, the feedback that happens in the neocortex actually supports the limbic response. Now, let me give you an example. When I was, just a little background, my degree was in experimental psychology, not just any old psychology, but experimental psychology. I had a scientific research that I did was accepted for publication in a scientific journal. So I'm a very, scientific person, empirical person. But when I was in junior high, I had a friend whose elder brother had a Mini Cooper, and these are now called the Mini Minis. And I thought that car was the cutest thing ever in the world, possibly because I thought he was the cutest thing ever in the world, but that's beside the point. So later on, when the new Mini Coopers came out, my limbic response, and I didn't realize this at all at the time, I just now realized this within the last, few months actually, was that when they came out, I said, oh, I want this car. And that was my limbic response to those cars because I had such a positive, emotional, associative memory to the Mini Cooper. So I did research. Being the research hound that I am, I did research. And the research that I came up with wasn't 100% positive. There was a lot of evidence to suggest that I should not be buying this car. But I bought it anyway. And so that's like, seriously, that's how that works. And if we're really honest with ourselves, it works very often in our lives. So why is this important? Your audience's reactions to symbols and emotional content are more powerful than all the facts or information that you can throw at them. We are, all of us, human beings who react. We take action. We are motivated to act based on emotion, not information. That's just how we're wired. And this is how we can use that knowledge to our advantage. That we are hardwired to feel positively about stories that use certain mythic motifs. And those mythic motifs are the motifs that we looked at in part 1. Now, why is this important? Because in addition to being hardwired to react to emotion, we are also hardwired to hear, tell, and remember mythic story better than information. Very important to remember. And I know that's a dramatic thing to say, so let's look at the logic behind it. So basically, Darwin said, his theory of evolution wasn't survival is of the fittest, it was that survival is of the most adaptable. And what we're going to see is how these mythic motifs are nothing if not adaptable. Let's go back 5,000 years. This is the stone tablet that has the first written story known to human civilization. It is the story of King Gilgamesh. It is from Sumeria. That's the Mesopotamian area, cradle of civilization. Then we move forward in time and across cultures to the Odyssey. This is 8th century BCE Greece. Then over to China, that's 4th century BCE. And then we go to India. Prince Rama is 200 CE or current era. Then, of course, we're familiar with King Arthur of the Middle Ages, Alice in Wonderland in the Industrial Revolution, and, of course, Star Wars in the Technological Revolution. Now, the thing about these stories and every story that has traveled to us across time and cultures is that the framework of all of these stories is the mythic motifs of the hero's journey. Then the adaptability of the hero motifs, you can see it in the medium. So it didn't matter with campfire when it was oral, then it went to tablets and books, radio, television, cinema, now internet, cloud, doesn't matter, they're adaptable. They're also adaptable across genre. So it could be romance, adventure, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, doesn't matter. Genre of the story, you find hero motifs in all the most popular stories. So why not business communication? As it turns out that hero stories and mythic motifs are adaptable to the big picture, for example, brand awareness or corporate communications, positioning for products and services. They're also adaptable to individual components, to case studies or customer stories, web copy, video scripts, whatever, and anything you put into words can be expressed more powerfully, more persuasively when you use these mythic motifs. So I want you to write this down either physically or write it down, laser write it down in your brain. 1, we react to emotion, not information. And 2, we are hardwired to feel positively about stories that use mythic motifs. Now remember that feeling positively is really important because that's the connection to the emotion, that's to that limbic brain, which is what's driving all behavior. So now that you're familiar with some of the science behind the HERO method, you're ready to move on to the next module. And what I'll do is I'll take you through a free offering, 4 steps you can start taking today to create human being to human being connections. In just a few minutes, you'll learn more about the heroic ideal and how to use it to generate more clicks and calls and develop more abiding relationships. I'll see you in part 3.